6 months after finalizing his divorce from Angelina Jolie, the actor is speaking out for the first time in an interview with GQ, published May 28th.
Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were not only actors, they were symbols. To the world, they seemed untouchable. 6 children, a French chateau, global humanitarian missions. Together, they looked like the picture of happiness. But what the world saw was only the surface. Behind the smiles and photographs, there were cracks slowly widening.
Except to say it was a very difficult time, and we are a family, and we will always be a family, and we will get through this time and hopefully be a stronger family.
Arguments, distance, and choices that could not be taken back. For years, silence covered what was breaking apart. It lasted long enough to keep the illusion alive, but silence cannot last forever.
She and Brad Pitt filed for divorce way back on September 19, 2016.
In time, the truth began to show, piece by painful piece. The beginning, sparks on set. It started in 2003, on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Brad Pitt was still married to Jennifer Aniston, America's favorite television star. Angelina Jolie had ended her marriage with Billy Bob Thornton not long before. What began as just another Hollywood project soon turned into something more. Their chemistry on screen was impossible to ignore. Rumors spread quickly. Tabloids hinting at late-night talks, stolen glances, and a connection that could not be hidden. By 2005, Brad and Jennifer announced their separation. Soon after, photographs surfaced of Brad with Angelina and her adopted son, Maddox, during a trip to Kenya. That single image changed everything. To the media, it was no longer speculation. It was confirmation. The birth of Brangelina had arrived. From that moment, their lives were no longer private. Every step they took, every look they shared, was recorded and examined. To the outside world, it seemed like the beginning of something perfect, a love story written under the brightest lights imaginable. Building a global family. Not long after they became a couple, Brad and Angelina began building a family that captured the world's attention. Their first step was adoption. Angelina had already adopted Maddox from Cambodia before meeting Brad, and together they later welcomed Zahara from Ethiopia and Pax from Vietnam. Each child brought a new story, a new layer to the image of their home. Alongside adoption, they had children of their own. In 2006, Shiloh was born in Namibia, a moment followed closely by cameras worldwide. 2 years later, twins Knox and Vivian arrived in France. Suddenly, the couple had 6 children, each with different roots, cultures, and identities. This unique mix made them stand out even more. They weren't just a Hollywood couple anymore, they were seen as a global family. Magazine covers praised them as proof of love beyond borders. To many, it looked like the perfect balance of fame and parenthood. For years, the family appeared close, strong, and unshakable. But even the brightest images can carry hidden shadows. Chateau Miraval and the fairy tale wedding. By 2008, Brad and Angelina had found a place they believed would anchor their lives. In the hills of southern France, they purchased Chateau Miraval, a sprawling estate surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. It wasn't only a home, it became a retreat where the children could grow away from flashing cameras. Soon, the couple launched a wine label from the estate, one that grew into a respected brand across Europe and the United States. Years later, in August 2014, Miraval became the setting for their wedding. Unlike the grand ceremonies expected of Hollywood royalty, theirs was quiet. No red carpet, no famous guests, just the 6 children, who each took part in the vows. The moment was presented as deeply personal, a promise made in private. For the public, it looked like the happy ending to a long romance. The castle, the children, the intimacy, it felt like a dream solidified in stone. Few could have imagined how quickly that dream would begin to crumble. The flight that changed everything. In September 2016, only 2 years after their wedding, everything fell apart. The family boarded a private plane from France to the United States. What happened during that flight was later described as the breaking point. Reports claimed Brad had been drinking. Arguments started, voices rose, and tensions spread through the cabin. At some point, their eldest son Maddox tried to step in. According to documents, Brad grabbed him during the struggle. When the plane landed, silence turned into headlines. Angelina filed for divorce almost immediately, citing irreconcilable differences.
She and Brad Pitt filed for divorce way back on September 19, 2016.
But the truth was heavier than the words on paper. The FBI opened an investigation because the incident took place in international airspace. Child Protection Services also reviewed the case. After weeks of inquiry, both agencies closed their files, saying there was not enough evidence for charges. Still, the damage had been done. The once flawless image of Brad and Angelina as Hollywood's golden couple collapsed overnight. Behind the glamour, the family was now caught in a storm that would last for years. The custody war. After the divorce filing, the question of custody quickly became the heart of the battle. At first, Angelina was granted primary custody, while Brad could only visit under supervision. The court said it was to protect the children, but it also deepened the divide between father and family. Maddox, the eldest, pulled away first. By 2021, he was reported to have testified in court with words that were not kind to Brad. Some sources even claimed he wished to drop Pitt from his name. Pax soon followed with anger of his own. In a private post online, he accused Brad of creating fear in the home. Though deleted quickly, the words spread and left a mark. Shiloh, once seen as the bond between them, made her choice years later. In 2024, she legally removed the Pitt surname, keeping only Jolie. Vivian quietly used her mother's name in a Broadway production, while Knox stayed out of the public eye. Every small decision from the children spoke louder than any statement. What had started as a custody arrangement turned into years of broken trust and distance that no court order could heal. Money, power, and the Chateau lawsuit. As the custody fight dragged on, another battle rose over the place that once symbolized their happiest years, Chateau Miraval. What began as a family refuge and vineyard slowly turned into the center of a legal storm. When they bought the estate, ownership was split evenly between them. But in 2021, Angelina sold her shares to a company tied to Russian billionaire Yuri Shefler without Brad's approval,
claiming that Jolie sold her stake in Miraval to the Stoli Group without his knowledge.
For Brad, it was more than business. Miraval was where he built memories with the children, where the wedding vows were spoken, and where his wine label had grown into a global brand. He sued Angelina, claiming they had agreed neither would sell without the other's consent. Angelina's team argued she had every right and accused Brad of trying to silence her with legal conditions. The fight shifted from personal to financial, drawing in international courts and investors. What was once a home became a prize worth hundreds of millions. To the public, it showed how love had turned into something else: contracts, lawsuits, and control. The chateau no longer stood for romance, it stood for war. Brad breaks his silence. For years, Brad chose not to speak. Court papers and secondhand reports were the only glimpses of his side. Then, in May 2025, he finally gave a rare interview. His words were measured, almost restrained. He confirmed that the divorce papers had been signed the year before and described it simply as something that needed to be done. When asked why he had stayed silent for so long, he said he believed words would only add to the chaos. Silence, he explained, was his way of avoiding more harm. About his children, he spoke carefully. He admitted there was distance, but said he would always be there if they ever reached out. He did not name anyone, only hinted at the pain of seeing bonds fade. Brad also revealed that he had been sober since 2016, focusing on meditation, art, and a quieter rhythm of life.
Through discipline and reflection, he embraced balance, finding strength in stillness, peace in creation, and freedom in mindful living.
He seemed weary of the spotlight, no longer chasing the validation of fame. To some, his tone felt cold. To others, it sounded like peace. Either way, it was the first time the world heard his voice again. Two diverging paths. By the time he spoke, Brad's life had already taken a different shape. He returned to films, but with more care in his choices. His production company, Plan B, continued to release projects that earned awards and critical praise. Away from the business, he was often seen at his home in Santa Barbara, living quietly, sculpting, reading, and keeping out of sight. Reports linked him to Inez de Ramon, a jewelry designer. Friends described their relationship as steady and private, far removed from the glare he once lived under. Angelina's path was just as distinct. She leaned more into directing and producing, stepping behind the camera instead of in front of it. She worked on stage projects, including one where Vivian joined her as a creative assistant. Her public life was focused on her children and on humanitarian work. Wherever she appeared, at film festivals or charity events, her children were never far from her side. The two lives no longer touched. What once was shared had split into separate worlds, each carrying forward with its own rhythm, its own silence. Time has carried them far from the world they once built together. The red carpets, the family portraits, the castle in France, all belong to another life. Brad now walks a quieter path, while Angelina continues her work with children by her side. The wounds between them remain, and the distance from the children lingers like a shadow. Yet in his brief words after years of silence, Brad showed that endings do not always bring answers. What remains is not perfection, but memory. A story once too bright, now remembered for both its light and its fracture.